Katherine Stanek's work explores the relationship between our environment and the human condition, describing how one reflects the experiences of the other. With her sculpture, she aspires to capture the essence of the moment when personal experience and public environment converge, resulting in a three-dimensional object of beauty and complex emotions.
That's the emotion behind all of the work. That's what influences all of that work, is that combination of the two.
Back in 2009, I made a video about Katherine's techniques of concrete sculpture. So far, it has had 87,713 hits, mostly from artists eager to emulate what she does. Good luck with that, but I know what my viewers want, so here's some more tech talk from the master. Since your last show, has your work changed much? Have you invented any new techniques?
Yeah, it changes with every object. Every new piece I create is a completely different formula, is a completely different approach. No two objects, even if they look similar in their finish, were created the same way. The handling in each one is related to what it is I want to say in the piece, which is why it can vary dramatically from this high polish, brilliant color to this more earthy, fragmented. It really depends on the piece and what I'm trying to say. So I don't limit myself to a technique or a style to create something. I start off with what do I want to say, and then I follow that up with how do I do that. And every time I do a piece, I learn something from it that I can bring to the next. And that vocabulary gets bigger. I then can say more in different ways.
What are some of the odder techniques this time?
Odd?
Well, unique.
This one here called Fallen, that's incorporating a lot of what I've been doing before in terms of directly modeling over an armature with the material, but at the different stages, I'm not only mixing the pigment in the mixture for the colors, while it's curing, I'm acid etch staining and fresco painting it. Then I put another layer on and it continues to respond. I have no idea what the color is going to be because it's a chemical reaction on all parts, but what ends up is what you see, and I really like that. I have a painter's background. I actually was a painter when I entered the academy, so I still have some memories of color mixing. It's rarely the same color when you mix it than when it cures. There's a lot of things that happen. First, it's a chemical reaction that goes with it, so every ingredient you put in there. So if I alter my water content, if I alter my aggregate, if I alter my plasticizers or anything else I add in there, it's going to change the color. Then when it's on and it's curing and it's that drying surface, in order for me to match the color, I have to wet down the surface because that's going to be more accurate to a fresh batch that was mixed, as opposed to trying to match it dry.
For our viewers, that was not one of Katherine's sculptures that just fell. It was a wine bottle, thank God.
You're right.
The parts that are distressed looking, coming through the color, how do you achieve that? For instance, the gouge on her shoulder.
Some of it is cut out and some of it is just intentional design in the original. So in that particular case, I made the original out of plaster because I wanted a high polish finish. The plaster responds a lot like concrete does. Then I did a mold of that, and then when I cast it in the mold, I intentionally weakened the surface greens that I put in first in the areas I wanted to cut out, because it's easier to cut them out when they're weakened. And then when I filled it with the orange color, when I took it out of the mold, I can simply tap away the weakened spots and then clean up the edges. The way I work with the material is I respond to it as much as it responds to me. So when I'm doing something and it breaks, invariably it does, especially when I'm modeling direct, because you get a little air pockets. Things happen technically that cause it to break or fracture. And sometimes when that happens, and I look at it, it improves the piece because I know in my mind already what it is I want to say. I just don't know how to say it. And when it helps me do that. But when it breaks and it's not intended and it doesn't help the piece, I got to fix it. And I make that decision on a case-by-case basis.
By the way, there are good reasons for wanting to make sculpture out of concrete, as Katherine's friend and fellow sculptor George Nista told me.
Katherine and I are friends. We go back a long ways. I was at the Pennsylvania Academy teaching when she was there. I've always liked her work a lot. I think it's very powerful, and I've been following her for years now, really. Right from the start, she left the gate running, you might say.
They didn't have concrete sculpture at the Academy when you were there, did they?
No, and she's really pioneered this technique. In fact, people call her from all over the world about it. And it's a great technique. I'm wondering myself how I might adapt it to my own work, because two things. You can color it right away, and you can put it outside. And one thing about sculpture, it takes up space in people's houses, especially if it's big, they want it to go outside. A lot of my work, if it's not bronze, which is much more costly, then it can't go outside. So what do you do with it? Well, you keep it for the rest of your life after you've made it. So anyway, it's a very nice technique. And then the work always has a sort of an archaeological underpinning, and that's nice by association. There's a lot that it suggests and that you can take away from it.
Katherine sent me an image of a broken pillar from the Parthenon, which informed the composition of her work, Dignity. She wrote, "While reconstruction is what makes this structure accessible, further reconstruction will alter its appearance, and it will never be the same, begging the question, are we taking away or giving back dignity?" The same can be said when the deceased are removed from their sacred sites and put on display in museums, as is the case with the sacrificed Inca children and Egyptian mummies. By putting them on display, we treat them like an object, as if they were some sort of Greek column that must be preserved for our viewing. Again, the question of dignity arises. So these are profoundly emotional pieces. They're not just an intellectual exercise.
Yeah, it's kind of therapy for me. It's therapeutic. You know, when I know I'm finished, when I've said what I needed to say and I don't need to do it anymore.
Well, Katherine, it may be selfish, but speaking for your tens of thousands of fans, we hope you keep needing this art therapy for many, many years to come.